Thank you everybody for joining today, the D2 Uncovered webinar. So I'm Larissa Primavera. I'm the Director of Sales. I work in our FME US group. With us today we have Manuela Bernhardt. She's our Managing Consultant for ECM, also in the FME US group. And we have Christian Mayer, who's a Senior Consultant with us at FME AG out in Braunschweig, Germany. He also is the lead of our Competency Center for Documentum, or EMC IIG product line. So Christian keeps us up to date on any new releases, new information, new updates, all within the IIG product line, all throughout the FME group. So you'll note today that you are on listen-only mode. At the end of the session, we will take questions through the chat, and we will read them aloud and answer them aloud for you. The session is also being recorded. We will distribute via email the recorded link at within a week's time frame after the session. So what are we covering today? A very short overview of FME. Then we'll talk about D2, a D2 overview, product challenges, the overview and configuration options. We're going to bring EMC World to you just with some updates that we learned about while in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago. The D2 4.2 features as well, and then we'll talk about implementing D2 projects, so project approaches, deployment strategies, FAQs, any customizing to D2, and then we're going to show you a small demonstration of Webtop and D2 in parallel. At the end of the session, just a couple more slides at the end, lessons learned, and talk a little bit about our offering for a D2 assessment. So again, we're going to keep it within the time frame as best we can, and we'll get started. So we just wanted again to talk to you a little bit about FME, who we are, what we do. If you're not aware, we are located, we're worldwide, so we're headquartered in Braunschweig, Germany, which I did mention. Offices in Danbury, Connecticut, also offices throughout Germany and Munich, Frankfurt, and Cologne. Our development office is in Romania. We focus on ECM. We partner with EMC Documentum for the entire IIG product line. So we provide consulting for EMC IIG products and also solutions. We have an EMC certified product called Migration Center, which you may be aware of as well for previous webinars. We focus in business intelligence, where we partner with Click, formerly ClickTech, now Click, so we do ClickView solutions and services as well, and then individual software development. We were founded in 1995. We have 150 plus employees worldwide. So with that short overview, I'm going to turn it over to Manuela to get started on our D2 overview.
Okay, thanks a lot, Larissa, for a short introduction. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. So with the next few slides, I want to provide you with a quick overview of D2 before we dive into some more detail later on. So there are different project challenges that company might face on a regular basis. There might be requirements for completely new applications to provide, for example, a completely new Documentum solution for a new business area to store and manage additional content. So the question there is, what are the different implementation options and which technology should be used and why? Then secondly, there might be new requirements for existing applications, which would lead to additional strong customizations. So in this context, it might make sense to review the current technology and to decide whether further investments into the current technology still make sense, or whether this might maybe be a good point for a technology change. Then there also might be new environments and platforms be introduced as new standards in the customer environment, and this might bring up the need to evaluate on how to migrate the existing applications onto that new platform. And lastly, there might also be already other application environments existing, and the strategy might be to consolidate environments as much as possible. So for example, strategies are to reduce the number of repositories, reduce the number of servers in general, or to reduce the number of applications that need to be maintained. So in this context, the need comes up to review the existing applications and to re-evaluate technologies and to come up with some approaches on what a consolidation of those environments could look like. Typical questions that come up in those mentioned scenarios are the following. Like, should we introduce D2, or what are the technology options that we have? What is the impact for the IT side? So what would the system landscape look like for the different options, and what are the pros and cons of those options? What is the impact for the business side? So how would the business work with a new application depending on the options that we have? Can we fulfill all of their requirements? Can I migrate my existing applications to D2? So what will it mean for me to port my existing customizations to a new technology like D2? What is possible, what is not? So not everything might be portable to that new solution. What will it cost us? So that is, of course, also an important question here. So there might be additional license costs involved. Then we have the project and implementation costs. And after go live, there will also be associated maintenance costs. So all of those costs have to be taken into consideration. Does it economically make sense? So this question is closely tied to the question before. Costs and the business case and business value have to be looked at, and also in case there are already old applications existing, this has to be compared to the cost of the existing applications to maintain it and make the existing application future-proof. Should we or do we have to migrate all applications to D2? So there might be multiple applications in your application landscape, so that you need to define a strategy for all of them, and there might be different scenarios possible, from migrating only one application at a time to migrating maybe all applications at once. And all those different possibilities need to be looked at and need to be evaluated with their pros and cons. And then lastly, what is our risk? So each project, especially when introducing new technologies, comes along with different types and different levels of risks that might happen. So also they need to be thoroughly looked at to decide whether this is acceptable and whether this is an approach you want to go with. So we won't be able to answer all of those questions in this webinar, and they are highly dependent on your specific situations, but at least we hope to give you some pointers and some ideas. So first of all, the biggest question is about what EMC's client strategy looks like, so in which direction the Documentum clients are going. This EMC slide is already from last year, I think, but for the general picture there haven't been many changes. In the past, Webtop has been the main client interface with content management-centric functionalities. With the WDK framework in the background, there was a high customization level possible, and customers definitely took advantage of it and created highly specialized and highly customized client applications. Now, Webtop is not immediately going away, but EMC decided to not push this technology any further, but instead to go with newer, more modern technologies to provide fresher user interfaces with better response time and better usability. And as a result, we have two main clients that EMC is focusing on now. On customization side, we have the XCP client as a very process and workforce-centric client framework that allows you to model and design very complex business processes. And on the other side, we have D2 as a more content-centric client that is following a different approach, which is to mainly create whole custom applications just or at least mostly by configuration means, through a simple configuration user interface that can also be used by non-developers. We still have some products in the old My Documentum suite available as well, but those also just offer very simple configurations. Additionally, EMC is putting more and more focus to cloud-related topics and to be able to provide additional value to customers by integrating, for example, with tools like Simplicity for the document exchange, and also, for example, by providing map services that can be used to integrate functionalities in your own customer-specific applications. Now, what is the main difference between D2 and older technologies like Webtop? In the past, the development and customization part took the majority of the efforts, whereas only a small part of the requirements could be fulfilled only by configuration. And because of that high customization level, the maintenance efforts also were pretty high. So for the ones of you who have worked with Webtop customizations in the past, you will know how difficult it is even just to go to a new patch level. It might mean to merge XML, JSP, and even Java files. Now with a D2 approach, this changes, and most requirements can actually be fulfilled only by configuration means. There's still topics that cannot be implemented by configuration. There are always limits, and D2 offers options there to take care of most of those last 20%. We will talk a little bit about that later on. But for the most part, this configuration approach highly reduces the maintenance efforts and also allows you for better structured and more consistent applications. And with the newer web technologies in the background, you're also able to create nicer client experiences for the users. Now this slide just lists some of the configuration options that you have available in D2. There are definitely a lot more than that, but we just want to point out a few to you. So the most common ones are the auto-naming, where you can dynamically fill any attribute values for a document. This can be the object name or also any other property on the document. You can build the values as a combination of any available information, including date values and also automatic counters. With auto security, you can, for example, set dynamic permissions based on specific conditions that might apply to your document, just like lifecycle states, etc. The auto linking further down here allows you to dynamically create all the necessary folder structures based on information that's stored on the document. That way you can make sure that all your documents go into the expected folders, whether this is just one or also multiple folders in your structure. Then on this side we have workflow configuration. So these allow to use your existing workflow templates from your repository, but they build a configuration layer on top of it to make most out of your workflow and customize it to your specific business needs. And you could also have, for example, multiple workflow definition based on the same workflow template. And with the lifecycle configuration, you have also very complex configuration possibilities to define what should happen with a document in the different lifecycle states. A lot of those things you had to write code for in the past, or you had to do customizations, but here this is mostly done by configuration layer. There are also two additional modules available that I want to mention shortly, which is C2 and O2. C2 allows for different kinds of PDF modifications. For example, you can dynamically add watermarking to documents, or you can add and create signature pages. O2 provides the possibility to synchronize with Office properties. So this means that you can either have properties in your Office documents that you fill with Documentum attribute values, or even the other way around. You can pull information from your Office document and store this in your Documentum attributes. Again, this is just a very short overview, and we will see a few of the configuration possibilities later on in the demo. Now, as Larissa mentioned, just a couple of weeks ago, EMC World took place, so that the question is whether there was anything new regarding the client technologies discussed that we should mention here. So on this slide, I've just summarized a few of the items that were mentioned. For Documentum Sender Stage, the question came up, what will happen with this client? And the answer was that there is no further support planned for Sender Stage, so that customers that are using it for their applications should look into alternatives and see about migrating their applications. For Documentum Webtop, there will be a new release later on in the year, but it has to be pointed out here that Webtop is seen as feature complete, so there will be no big changes or no big improvements anymore. The new release will just be about resolving any known issues or adding any additional platform support. But also the new release will add again a new support cycle, so that Webtop will not disappear immediately from the platform, which is always the fear. But customers should still use that time to analyze their current applications and to decide which more future-proof technologies would make sense and to start planning for any possible application migrations. Now for D2, the main keywords at EMC World were productivity, information integrity, and agility, which will be the core areas for future enhancements and improvements. The goal is to evolve D2 from just an adaptable user interface to a more adaptive user interface. So that means the interface should react by itself to specific context changes and should proactively provide with the user with relevant information. So what that means, or one example was here the handling of virtual documents. So whenever the user selects a virtual document in the browser tree or in the document list, then the widget for virtual documents will come automatically to the front to allow the user to navigate within the virtual document components. Another topic that was mentioned for the future is that they might look more into the use of D2 configurations in other clients and other applications, and they actually already started with this approach by using the D2 web services within the SharePoint integration to leverage the configurations there. And then last but not least, another question that came up in multiple sessions is how D2 and XCP will interact in future. So the careful response there was that no direct interaction or harmonization is planned at the moment. The clients will stay separate clients that are optimized for their very specific use cases. The goal is to provide the best fit solution to the customers for their specific different needs. So there's currently no plan to combine those two clients into one client. Also in the beginning of this year, the new version 4.2 for D2 was released with addressing already a lot of the items for the before mentioned topics, productivity, information integrity, and agility. So here you see a slide with most of the strategic themes that were addressed, but I don't want to read the whole slide to you, but I just want to point out a few of the items that might be interesting. So with 4.2, the recycle bin was introduced to allow for soft delete of documents so that they can be restored if needed. Also, there were intelligent URLs introduced which allow you to call the D2 client with specific commands to execute document actions. Another nice feature is that you now can edit the properties directly within the properties widget. So it's not just a read-only widget, but it's more efficient to directly change properties there. A new PDF viewer technology was introduced, which provides more functionalities and makes the PDF viewer more usable or better usable. Drag and drop is now available from the file system, but also from Outlook. So the email import functionality was added, and there are different configuration options that were introduced to define how emails and how their attachments should be handled in D2. The creation wizard was simplified to only request necessary information and to not overload the user with screens that he has to go through. And on configuration side, there have been some improvement on the management of the D2 configurations, how to export and how to package them. And also there was a thin content client transfer introduced that can be configured for any situations where you don't have Java available, but also this won't have the same comfort level as having the full content line transfer similar to what you have in Webtop available. So much for a general overview, so let's now look closer at topics related to the implementation of D2 projects. When implementing a new application based on D2 or any other new technology, there might be different deployment scenarios possible depending on your specific application environment and on your situation. Now, in the first and easiest scenario, you're deploying a completely new environment that is still empty, so there are no side effects that you might need to consider. You can still use any existing documents out of other applications and other environments and migrate them into your new D2 environment to initially fill the application. You can, for example, use our product migration center for that Larissa mentioned shortly. It already has a D2 importer available, which allows you to, for example, apply D2 rules for auto-naming, auto-linking, and auto-security while you're importing your documents in the bulk. In the second scenario, there might be already other applications running in the environments, but the applications coexist side by side, which means they do not share or access the same content files, but for example they work with different cabinets in the repository. So in that case there are no major side effects to be expected. Now in the third scenario, it adds an additional layer of complexity by having parallel applications, but they also actually do share and access the same content in the repository. So in this case, it has to be made sure that the documents stay consistent no matter with which application they are processed. So the same rules need to be applied in both applications. And in the last scenario, an existing old application is completely replaced and exchanged with a new technology. In that case, it might be necessary to change the existing documents to actually meet the requirements of the new application and to comply with the rules that the new application enforces. So it might be necessary to rename the documents so it's conform with the auto-naming or to change any other attributes. Or it might also be necessary to link the documents to new locations to conform with the auto-linking that is defined. Also, it might be necessary to actually change the data model and to add new attributes which the new configuration model requires. But no matter whether the projects go with a completely new application or replacing an existing application or just adding additional new requirements, the project steps within a D2 project might always look very similar. So in the beginning, the requirements should be collected and analyzed in detail again, even when coming from an existing application. And they should be prioritized and evaluated also regarding the feasibility with D2. Because looking at D2, it's a configuration client that might not offer the exactly same possibilities that you had in your old environment. Now with D2 it also makes sense to introduce a proof of concept or prototype already in very early project phases, as it's possible to relatively quickly create something that is visible and that can be discussed with the customers. So this approach can be used to make users familiar with the user interface, to collect their feedback in very early stages, and also to prove out some of the items for which the feasibility with just configurations might not be completely clear. So it's always better to find out in the beginning of the project what's possible and what not. And with its configuration model, D2 also allows for some relatively easy communication with the business in workshops, for example. The prototype can be looked at together, and small things can even be changed on the fly in a workshop together to show the impact of the changes. So this approach supports the decision-making process in the further project and helps you to decide on the final requirements on what to implement with D2 and what to maybe leave for a later project stage. And then during the project execution, you have the advantage that the existing prototype can be used as a basis for the implementation, and the custom application can be built on top of it, and then it can be developed in multiple iterations by gathering feedback and then enhancing the client step by step with additional configurations. So let's now look into some more detailed questions that might come up around D2. And I'm happy to have Christian now with me in the meeting, who will support me by providing the answers based on his and FME's experience. So Christian, you ready?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. So is ActiveX required?
So D2 consists of two web applications. One web application for the end users, which offers ECM features. There is no ActiveX required, but there's also another web application, the D2 configuration client, for the configuration of D2, which is used by a small group of administrators who develop and maintain applications, and for this configuration client ActiveX is still required.
Okay, Thanks. What are the minimal requirements?
Well, the latest version of D2 is version 4.2. This version was released early this year. And for this version, at least Internet Explorer 9 is required. And if you want to have a very usability interface, you also need Java 7, update 51 on the client machines. On the backend side, you should have at least Content Server version 6.6.
Okay. What are the components of a D2 installation?
Okay, I already mentioned D2 consists of two web applications. These two web applications will be deployed on the application server. In addition to that, you have to install a DAR file which installs new object types, methods and jobs to the doc base, which are used by D2. And in addition to that, you have to deploy some libraries on the message server that the jobs and methods can be executed by D2. So these are the components of a D2 installation.
Okay. Do I have to migrate my documents to use D2?
Well, this depends on your D2 application. It is possible to use existing doc base and the existing doc base structure when you configure D2 to use your object types and your structure. But it's also possible to make some changes in the data model and in the structure if you want to have additional D2 features in your solution.
What technology is D2 based on?
The D2 client is built with Google Web Toolkit, GWT, and with a sensor framework called GXT. This is the extension for the Google Web Toolkit.
Okay. Do I need Java to run D2?
Well, in the latest version of D2, EMC released a new feature called Syn Mode. And when you enable this Syn Mode, Java is not required on the client. But with the Syn Mode, you lose some features, some comfort features, for example, a drag and drop or a very user-friendly check-in and check-out. So if you want to offer a user-friendly client for your users, you have to enable or install Java on the client machines.
Okay. Can I reuse WDK components for D2?
Unfortunately not, because D2 was built with another technology, with another framework, and this framework is very different to WDK, so you cannot reuse WDK components within D2.
Okay. Can I customize D2 beyond the configuration layer?
Yes, that is possible. D2 offers some extension points which you can use for your customization. I will go into more detail on the next slide, so be curious.
Okay. Is drag and drop possible? What about Outlook?
Yes. So D2 offers three kinds of drag and drop mechanism. So the first is the drag and drop from your file system to D2. The second is from Outlook to D2, and the third is inside of the client, so you can move documents, objects from one folder to another.
Okay. Are TBOs supported?
Yes, TBOs are supported with D2, but you have to be careful with the implementation. Otherwise, you will have performance issues. So D2 executes often a safe operation, and when you have TBOs with a very heavy logic, then you might have performance issues. But in general, TBOs are supported.
Can I use Webtop and D2 in parallel?
Be curious. I will answer this question in a few minutes. I have a own slide for this, so I will explain this later.
Perfect. Can I implement all my Webtop customizations in D2?
The D2 approach is configuration and not customization, and to gain the advantage of D2. D2 offers some extension points. I already mentioned this for customization, but the D2 framework or the D2 extension points are not so extensible than the Webtop or WDK framework.
Okay. And how do life cycles and workflows differ between D2 and Webtop?
Well, let's start with life cycles. So D2 has its own life cycle implementation. You have to implement, or you have to configure the life cycles in the D2 configuration client. This has the advantage that you can use predefined D2 methods in your life cycle. For example, to apply security, to execute auto-naming and auto-linking and things like that. So yeah, D2 has its own life cycle implementation and do not use the default Documentum life cycles. Workflows. So D2 uses the default Documentum workflow, which you can build with Workflow Manager. This is similar to Webtop. In addition to that, you have to create a configuration for each workflow in the D2 configuration client. There you can configure some additional features which are offered by D2. And if you start a workflow with D2, the system will also create another object in the background in the doc base for this workflow. So the workflows in D2 are a little bit different than workflows in Webtop.
Okay, thank you. Then I will hand over from here to you. Once I found my panel. Give me 1 second.
Oh.
Okay, sorry. So, who made you presenter?
We have to continue with the presentation.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, customizing in D2. What's possible? This is an interesting topic. A lot of customers ask for customizing D2. And I've already mentioned that D2 offers a few extension points that you can use for your own code to extend the default D2 features. Once more again, the D2 approach is configuration and not customization, but for some requirements you have the possibility to customize D2. First of all, widgets. So one extension point is the widget customizing. So a widget is an external web application displaying as an iframe in the D2 client, and you are able to write your own widgets and integrate these widgets in the D2 user interface to add your own user interface or to add parts into D2. On this slide, you see, for example, the FME toolbox. This is a widget we have developed in a customer project. So this widget displays icons, and with these icons, you can execute features in D2. A widget is an external web application, and this external web application communicates through a so-called Open Ajax hub with a D2. So you can send messages and receive messages from the Open Ajax hub, and this is the way D2 communicates with custom or on widgets. On the technology side, so for widgets you can use any web framework you are familiar with. The only thing is that the framework should support JavaScript to communicate with the Open Ajax hub. So you can use modern frameworks like AngularJS or GXT, or also JSPs with some JavaScript. Okay, the next extension points are actions. Actions are similar to Webtop actions, so you can execute actions through the D2 menu, and you can write your own actions and deploy your actions to the web application. An example for a custom action is if you want to open your own help document for your solution, then you can write an own action which opens your own help document, for example. Services. This is also very important in D2. You have a lot of possibilities to modify the D2 behavior with services. So if a user executes a function in D2, the D2 client calls a service, and you have the possibility to override this service and change the behavior. So there are three possibilities. The first is that you add your code before the default service is executed. You have a post-processing, so you can add your code behind the service or after the service is executed, and you have also the possibility to override the whole service. So with this mechanism, you are able to modify dialogues, for example, or change the search behavior. These are only two examples, but the overriding of services are very powerful. The last thing is the D2FS web service. This web service is a D2 web service, and you can use this web service to integrate D2 features or to have a communication from an external application to D2 or to the content server. The advantage by using the D2FS web service is that the D2 configuration will automatically apply to the objects you modify or create. Okay, Webtop and D2 in parallel. I already mentioned this, that I will explain this later. Now it's time for Webtop and D2 in parallel. So the first thing is, yes, you can use Webtop and D2 in parallel on the same repository. We have already done this in a customer project, and it's run very good. So in general, there are two scenarios or use cases to run D2 and Webtop in parallel. The first is that D2 and another application, for example Webtop, use separate cabinets and separate object types, so that you have no data overlap between your applications. This is a very good approach to have separate data, and that the application only uses the objects which were created through this application. The other scenario is that two applications or more use the same cabinets, so you have a data overlap. That means that Webtop and D2 or another client uses the same objects, documents, folders, and things like that. And in this case, you have to be sure that all clients have the same functionalities. That means if you configure an auto-numbering or an auto-linking in D2 and you modify an object in D2, then this will be applied to the object, but the same functionality is not executed if you modify this object in Webtop, for example. So in this case, you have to be sure that both clients have the same functionality. In addition to that, there are some other important aspects you should know if you want to use D2 and Webtop in parallel. So, for example, D2 overrides the Documentum mail method for sending emails. So if you already had modified the mail method, you have to find a workaround, or we have to implement this workaround for you, that D2 sends out their emails and also the other application which uses your custom mail method. Another topic, workflows and life cycles. There you have also to be careful that these are work with these two applications. I was finished with the slide. Now I want to show you a short demonstration of D2. I hope this is not the first time you see D2 live, because I will not explain so many D2 features and details today. The use case for the demo today is that I want to show you the possibility to create objects with D2 which are protected against editing and modifying in other application. In our case, this is Webtop. So therefore, I've prepared a small D2 application and the Webtop application. Each application has its own cabinet and object type. And in a few seconds, I will log in to the D2 application as a coordinator and will create a document. And there we will see that I have delete permission in the D2 client. And after that, I will switch to Webtop, log in with the same user, and then we will see that I've only read permission on this object I've just created in D2. So this is a way how to smoothly migrate applications to D2 or create new applications with D2 on the same repository, that you use different object types and protect the documents you have built or you've created with D2 for modifying in other applications. Okay, let's start. So I log in as a user pure coordinator. Here you see my D2 application. I see all the cabinets in the repository. Here's my object list. For these of you, if you see D2 the first time, all these tabs are widgets. So the D2 consists of widgets, and here I have a workspace, and these are very new features for Documentum users. This is really a new feature of the D2 client. And here you see the FME toolbar I've shown you already in the slide. Okay, let's create a new document in our cabinet. The cabinet is called Pure for the procurement department. You have already folders, but I have also the possibility to navigate in the R&D, in the research and development cabinet, and for example open or see some documents and see the properties. So with this D2 client, I have a complete view on the repository, and I can navigate through the repository and also see documents which were created in another application. Okay, let's create a new document, and therefore I will I will start the creation wizard. For example, NDA document. I will choose PS, Professional Services, and EMC US as a supplier. Here you see an attribute called document number. Therefore, I've created auto numbering. So in a few seconds, you will see that D2 automatically create an auto number. oops, this. So here I can select the template, and now my document will be created. Where is starting? Okay, and when I'm back in the D2 client, I can check in and then finish the creation of the document. And here you see my attributes, so the properties of the document and the document number which was created through the creation of this document. And here you see that the document was already linked in this folder structure. This was done through auto-linking. This is also a D2 feature. Okay, when I open now the permissions dialog, you see that I have delete permissions on this object. I'm the user pure coordinator, and here you see my permissions delete. So if I edit these properties, I'm able to save, and you see here my changes. So you've seen that I've created a document, and I'm able to modify this document with D2, and also have delete permissions. Now I want to switch to Webtop. I also use the same user. This is the same repository, of course. I log in. Oops. Sorry. Once again. Okay. Here you see the Webtop application. You see the two cabinets, and I navigate to pure FMA US PS, and here you see my document. This is the document I've just created, and if I open the properties, you already see that these properties are in read-only mode. Yeah, and now on the permission tab, I see that I have only read permissions, but the ACL said I have delete permissions. So this is a feature of the content server, that you can protect documents in other applications, and this is a very good way and approach to save, to protect the documents which were created with D2 in other applications. Okay, that's for today for the demo. It was very short, but I think the features and the things I want to show you are very interesting for you if you want to add D2 to your repository. Okay, Manuela, can you take over again? And show the last slide, my last slide. Okay, lessons learned. So in the previous 2 years I've done several D2 projects, and we've gathered a lot of experience with D2 itself, but also with some general aspects of D2. And these lessons I want to share with you today. So first of all, reduce project duration and costs. This was one experience we made in several projects. So our experience is that you can save project durations and cost when you use D2 with a configuration instead of a WDK or another client. So through the configuration you can save a lot of time and gather more flexibility for a change during the project. So this is a really good advantage of D2. The next thing, business is often more open for compromises if requirements can be implemented just by configuration. What does it mean? So for me, this is a daily situation that the business wants to have a highly custom function, which is cost intensive and also need a lot of customization. And when you offer the configuration or configuration option to the business, to the end customer, they often compromise this solution if they save a lot of money and time to get this solution. So this is another advantage if you use D2. Configuration approach is faster and more flexible than Webtop customization. So with D2 you configure a lot of things on your client, and when you want to modify this, you only change the configuration, and it will be automatically applied to the client. On the other hand, you have Webtop customization, and if you're a Webtop or WDK customer, you know that you have at least modify or create XML file. Often you have also a Java class or a JSP page which you have create or modified or override, and this is not so flexible and not so fast than the configuration approach within D2. Documentum D2 is not Webtop. It cannot 100% replace it by look and feel, especially when there is a high level of customization involved. So our existing Webtop customers know the application and features very well. Most of them expect the same functionality also in D2. But D2 is in some cases different than Webtop. So you have to check every function you need in your application if this is also offered in D2, and if the function is similar or equal in D2. For example, the creation of new documents. In Webtop, you select the template on the first page of the creation wizard. In D2, this is completely different. In D2, you select the template on the last page of your creation wizard after you have entered all the properties. So this is only a small difference, but there are also some other differences. Custom code can be replaced by configuration in a lot of cases. Yes, with D2 configuration and with the features of auto-naming, auto-numbering, auto-linking, apply security, lifecycle, and things like that, you can replace a lot of custom code which is needed in a Webtop or in a similar Webtop application. So with the configuration features, you can replace the custom code you need in a Webtop application. Existing data model might need to be changed or extended. This depends a little bit on the requirements of the customer or also on the D2 application. So if you have an existing data model and a repository and you want to use all the new D2 features, then you have to extend your data model that you can also use the new D2 features, which will increase the user which will increase the user satisfaction. Well, the last point, but a very interesting and important one for me, prototypes and POCs can be implemented pretty quick and can help to guide faster to the planned solution. So with D2, you can build your application through the configuration faster than with Webtop. And this allows you to present prototypes or POCs to the end customer at a very early phase of the project. And the advantage of this is that the end customer, the user, has a good impression of what they will get after the project is finished. So now you are able to communicate better with the customer about requirements and how the requirement will look in D2 in the solution you want to build for the customer. Yes, that's it for today from my side. I hope you have learned a lot of D2, and I've shared some experience that you can use in your upcoming D2 projects.
Thank you, Christian. Thanks, Manuela. That was great. Thanks, everyone, for your time. We are going to close the session now, and if there's any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us directly. We're happy to help. So thank you, everybody, and have a good day.